Welcome to Black Nouveau. This is our edition for March 22nd, 2017. I'm Joanne Williams. Our Liddie Collins takes you to a place that sells peace of mind, the Yarn Junkie. Mayor Tom Barrett continues his discussion on the state of the city. This week he talks about guns and juvenile offenders. And we'll tell you about the Red Ball Express, an important part of the Normandy invasion of World War II. You know, Abdul Hamid Royal has worked with many of the world's greatest recording artists, but it's in the field of show music that he may be best known. He played Jimmy Powers in the Milwaukee Rep's recent production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill and was the show's music director. Everett Marshburn has a profile of the award-winning native Milwaukeean.
And the Ovation Award goes to Abdul Hamid Royal, Gospel Excellence.
No kidding.
Abdul Hamid Robinson Royal was born Reginald Royal in a middle-class family whose home was full of music. His parents were very musical, though neither pursued that professionally. He started early.
I started plunking on the piano maybe around 4 or 5, and in my house, if you showed any kind of interest, it was immediately supported. So they took me to the conservatory where I was introduced to Toba Kramer, my first piano teacher. And she, many auditioned for a kid to see if it was just, their parents pushing them. And that set the course for the rest of my life. I always knew that not only was I going to do music, but music was a part of who I was. There was no kind of separation between the doing of music and the being of the music.
The native Milwaukeean says that growing up in the city was a great place for him.
The arts were very, very strong, and I was an artistic kid. So there was the Milwaukee Symphony, the Milwaukee Ballet, the Music for Youth Symphony Orchestra, the Florentine Opera Company, tons of gospel choirs, community choirs, lots of theater. It was a great place for me to grow up.
Was Milwaukee very segregated then?
Yes. I mean, it was, as it is now, incredibly segregated. But because I moved through those worlds, I experienced it, I think, in a different way than a lot of people.
How so?
Well, I was born in a black church. By definition, the black church was predominantly Black American, or some people call it African-American. So I had a very, very strong spiritual grounding from people who had lots of life experience and spiritual experience in the Black or African-American tradition. I went to predominantly white schools. I moved in predominantly white circles with my music. The conservatory, the Music for Youth Symphony Orchestra, high school band. Those were predominantly non-African-American or non-Black American environments. And so I spent, much of the week in non-Black environments. And then on the weekends, of course, we would go to church. And that was a sacred space that honored, sort of the Black tradition.
He graduated from Whitefish Bay High School and went to Oral Roberts University, but he returned to Milwaukee to get his bachelor's degree at the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music.
It was an incredibly supportive place. There was a healthy competition because everybody was really, really working on their craft, whether it was in the classical area or the jazz ensemble.
He got his bachelor's from the conservatory and went to Northwestern University to get a graduate degree in conducting.
I left grad school and moved to New York and was playing an audition for someone. They didn't get the job, and the guy who was directing it at the time was a guy named George Faison.
Faison hired him to work on his homage to the Apollo Theater. The Apollo, it was just like magic. The experience made a lasting impression.
Timothy Graffenreid, who was the musical director who I was assisting, turned over the vocal arrangements to me and said, do these arrangements. And whatever I could come up with, the singers could do. I watched George choreograph. Whatever he choreographed, the dancers could do. I watched the costume designers, all of it, and I thought, oh my God, if this is what New York is, if this is what this is about, I'm in. But my first Broadway show was a show called Truly Blessed, written by a woman named Queen Esther Morrow. And I did music, additional music and arrangements for that. And then, you know, my career just kind of took off after that. I was mentored by incredible people in New York. Linda Twine, who did The Lady and Her Music with Lena Horne and many, many other shows, kind of took me under her wing. And really, and a gentleman named Burl Red. Between the two of them, we used to call him Daddy Burl. Burl Red and Linda Twine, along with George, really steered my New York career.
He became the musical director for a number of shows on Broadway, including Five Guys Named Mo. And he's toured nationally and internationally.
While I was in New York, I took Sophisticated Ladies to Europe. I did Jelly's Last Jam, took that on its first national. Smokey Joe's Cafe, its first national. And I enjoyed that because what it allowed me to do was I learned the shows in New York, had an opportunity to really sort of dig myself into the material in the city. And then I love traveling. I got a chance to see all my friends around the country and around the world on somebody else's dime.
His travels and experiences brought about a religious conversion.
Something happened. I encountered a body of literature that began to sort of expand the ways that I began thinking about God and who I was and all that. And that was Islam. There was no crisis of faith. There was no fight. There was no I'm angry. There was no resentment. There was no anything. It was an expansion. And so I call it an embrace. I embraced Islam. And Islam embraced me. And it was tough for a lot of people because I was a clergy person. So what do? You know, you don't believe this anymore? Or it's like, no, I believe this and I believe this. And so that was kind of, it was a triumphant moment for me because, as I often say, I didn't come to Islam because I was broken. I came to Islam because I was fixed.
I've seen so many faces leave life stays, go away.
Abdul wrote and performed this song for Broadway Care's Equity Fights AIDS benefit concert. It's among his favorite compositions. More recently, he's been home as the musical director for 2 productions with the Milwaukee Rep, Sirens of Song and Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill.
I love what I do. And gratitude is an action. So the way that I show God that I'm grateful for what it is that I've been given is to do it. And to do it with the passion, clarity, to the best of my willingness and ability, and to keep trying to perfect my craft.
We are continuing our discussion on the state of the city with Mayor Tom Barrett. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, James.
One thing that we have to talk about here is the issue with guns in this city. For 3 years in a row, the MPD has taken out 2,000 guns off the streets of Milwaukee. Why are guns such a problem here?
Well, what we know is that there are a lot of guns, a lot of illegal guns on the streets of the city of Milwaukee. And, you can see the police department is doing its job. This last year in 2016, they took 2,419 guns off the street. And we're not talking about gun buybacks. We're talking about in criminal investigations and arrests. That's a lot of guns. And it really puts us ahead of, on a per capita basis, almost every major city in the country. So our police are doing their job in getting the illegal guns off the street. Where we're concerned is we know the laws have changed. We know it's made it much easier. And we're concerned about the weakness of the laws for felons carrying guns or criminals carrying guns, the straw purchases that occur, the guys who are selling the guns out of their trunks that don't even live in the city. Those are the places where we get frustrated because we see those guns coming into the city. And these aren't guns that are coming from Illinois or Indiana. A lot of these guns, or most of these guns, are Wisconsin guns. They're coming from dealers outside the city of Milwaukee because there are no registered gun dealers in the city of Milwaukee. So they're all coming from outside the city.
So are all of these guns, all 2,000 plus, are they all considered illegal guns?
Well, what they are is they're guns that we've obtained through arrests, essentially. So whether it's someone who doesn't have a concealed carry permit, whether it's someone who's committing a robbery, whether it's someone that's stopped by the police and they run and that show that the individual has a felony record and they can't own the gun, they're all incident to a lawful arrest. So that'll tell you, again, how proactive our police have been and what a dangerous job it is. You know, you're facing people who have guns. And there are times, and I would even say oftentimes, where the police officer's gun, the magazine, the thing that holds the bullets, is smaller than the magazine for the people that they are in charge of making sure don't commit crimes. So you've got a criminal who's got a magazine with 50 bullets in it, and the police officer has nothing even close to that. That makes me concerned that our police could literally be outgunned by the bad guys.
But you hear from Madison all the time and lawmakers there that this is just a Milwaukee problem, not a statewide problem. How do you feel when you hear that?
I get very angry because Milwaukee's part of the state of Wisconsin. And I'm not anti-gun at all. But you have to recognize that in an urban area that these are not guns that are being used to shoot geese, that this is an issue that has to be dealt with. But I'm also well aware of the power of the NRA and the grip that they have on state lawmakers.
Now, on to some positive news, especially with the youth. Teen pregnancies are down, infant mortality rates are down. Is this a combination of city officials and nonprofits working together?
I give a lot of credit to the community members who've been involved in this. The teen pregnancy, I'd say that those results are really, really positive. The teen pregnancy rate's down about 65%. We have record low.
65%
from about 2004.
Okay.
And we've got record lows of teen births in the African-American population, the Hispanic population. So I think that we have turned the corner there as well, where we've gotten the message across. Look, if you love babies, that's great, but wait till you're a little bit older so that you can give your baby a chance. And I think that message has gotten through in the community, and I think that that's very positive. Infant mortality, we've seen about a 17% reduction, which is good, but we still have a huge problem with the infant mortality rates, in particular in some of the African-American zip codes where there's high incidence of poverty. And we know the leading cause. The leading cause is really complications due to prematurity. And a lot of those are a result of life stresses.
Right.
And so we have to figure out how to help young women who are of childbearing age, sometimes between the first and second pregnancy, so that they have the support, so that they're not under that tremendous pressure that comes just from being a mother.
And at the same time, there's this other half of youth that's causing a lot of other issues. And I want to talk about that a little bit. You know, you got these youth still in cars, which it seems like it's almost a daily occurrence. And, you know, they're running red lights, they're putting other people's lives in danger. How are you going to address that issue?
Well, again, we're stepping up. The city of Milwaukee is doing what they can. And what I mean when I say that is our police department budget is over $300 million. It's actually larger than the tax levy for the entire city. So we are putting the resources in there. Where we get frustrated is when we see the repeat arrests. And there have to be meaningful sanctions. I'm not talking about sending everybody to Lincoln Hills, but if a kid finds out that he's going to be arrested for carjacking or stealing a car and is released again and again, if there's no consequences, we're not doing the kids any favors. We're not doing the people in the city any favors, and we're certainly not doing the crime victims any favors. So the frustration I think the police have is if they arrest a kid and they know him from 3 weeks ago because they arrested them, and somewhere in the system, and that's what we're trying to get our arms around, is why aren't there services, why aren't there the sanctions out there so that if a young person steals a car or runs red lights or carjacks, that they know that there are consequences. And again, I am not a let's throw away the keys guy on this stuff. It's we have to find out what works. And this means the entire criminal justice system has to have the same urgency, I think.
I want you to talk a little bit about Milwaukee's value. That was one of the big things that you talked about at your address. And you said that Milwaukee value to the state is big, and people don't understand that. How do you make other jurisdictions understand?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change the narrative. So if anybody says to you that Milwaukee's a drain on the state, I want you to cut them off immediately. I want you to correct them and say, wait a minute. And what we did is we used the state's own numbers, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue's numbers. We went back 7, 8 years as to how much we received from the state in a number of different categories and how much we paid to the state in a number of different categories. We updated those numbers to 2015, okay? Use the exact same categories. So some people say, well, you didn't include that, you didn't include that. Every category we used from 2007, we used for 2015. And what we saw is that there's what we call a $460 million Milwaukee dividend. In other words, Milwaukee, in those same programs, is giving $460 million more to the state than we're receiving from the state. And I think that that flies in the face of the stereotype that you get from a lot of people who love to bash Milwaukee. Milwaukee is an economic engine for the region and for the state. And the numbers that I quoted to you, they don't even include the taxes that are generated by people who live in the suburbs and work in the city.
Got it. Well, fantastic, Mayor. Thanks for coming on, and I enjoyed my conversation with you.
All right. Thank you very much, James.
Thanks.
There are songs of infantry, of the Air Corps and the sea, of the Coast Guard and Marines in battle dress. We sing August 44 and the Normandy French shore, just the story of the old Red Ball Express.
The Red Ball Express was a transportation unit that did serve in Europe from D-Day and beyond, and they carried the supplies, the munitions, the oil, the gas that kept the Army rolling. So Patton's Third Army could not have rolled through France and into Germany without the supplies that were being hauled and delivered and in harm's way by the transportation unit known as the Red Ball Express. And as a logistical feat, the administration and operation of that unit was phenomenal. My father's family, there were 6 sons. One was married, but the other 5 all served. 3 served in the Pacific, 2 served in Europe, and 1 uncle served with the Red Ball Express. It was a unit of excellence. They did their job. They performed, outstandingly, and they kept the war fighters, as they're commonly called today, going. So the service, and they were in harm's way, so the service that they provided was as important as the service of any American fighting during World War II.
It's the Red Ball Express, roaring by, roaring by. It's the Red Ball Express, roaring by.
I'm getting some relaxation.
I just retired and I want to have something to do.
I like to create. It helps me to relax.
And all of this takes place at Yarn Junkie, a new crafting center on Milwaukee's northwest side. People come here to create, share, and learn about crafts in knitting, crocheting, sewing, and quilting.
That has wool in it. This is acrylic.
Okay, so yeah,
Oh, you know what? This one is...
This store came about on a whim after owner Michelle Buckhanan, herself a crocheter, visited a local yarn store and got to thinking the what if.
I thought to myself, I wish we had a Black-owned yarn store. So I put it on Facebook and somebody said, you should open up a yarn store. You're a businesswoman. And I said, that wasn't my point. I just wish we had one. And I thought about it for just a little while and I thought, why not me? But quilting really is the stitch that holds.
With a business background in finance and knowing a lot of crafters, this store took off as a special place where people come and learn from each other.
We have knitting, crocheting, sewing, and quilting as regular classes. We also have people that can come in and teach spinning, which is a form of taking wool from its natural state and making yarn. So we have people that will teach that too if we have people that are interested in that. We have social group gatherings, so if people want to come together and maybe they want to learn how to sew, but it might even be a little bit more just looking for a social kind of activity to do together. They can do a sewing class together. We have instructors that will help them create a project that actually will give them a takeaway. So they don't really not have to know how to sew, but they can do that. They can also do the same thing with crocheting or knitting too. There are some basic techniques, but everyone develops their own way of doing everything. There's no science to doing, there's no particular special, only one kind of way of doing everything. Everybody's gonna hold their hook a different way. Everybody's gonna have their tension a different way when you're talking about knitting or crocheting. With sewing, people do different things, they have different techniques. So it's kind of learning the basics and making it your own. I have some young ladies that come in for sewing class on Monday evenings and they start by making simple projects to they're making clothes. So, I mean, you know, we cater to all ages, and so some of our ladies on Thursdays, which is really one of my favorite days, all retired, they come and this is this is our clubhouse, you know. Now I include myself in that because we just have so much fun here and I love that they share their day with me on Thursdays. It's the best day.
Crafting creates balance in a lot of people's lives.
With any kind of craft activity, I think sometimes people do it for the pure enjoyment of it. It helps balance you. It helps provide you with a release.
I'm learning to knit so it can calm me and help me get through the situation with dealing with a dementia parent. It's just calming.
It helps you explore your creativity.
When I first learned how to crochet, I was doing bikinis because they were small projects. So I was like, okay, I can do something small. And then I progressed into like dresses and skirts and more wearable items.
So far, I've made a couple of scarves. And I just graduated to a project, which is my first one. I'm trying to make a poncho.
For young people, I think when they are exposed to different things, then it helps them to bring out creativity that they might not otherwise show or display because they're not really exposed to that. So if you're not somebody that comes from a family that is crafty and sewing all the time, then how would you know if you enjoy it if you don't try it? You know, so if you could put that in front of a young person, then, you know, you might learn something about what they really like to do and things that they can really kind of express themselves. With older people, I think, you know, it gives older people a release from maybe their day-to-day. Maybe they're doing something on the day-to-day that is trying for them, and this is a getaway from the routine day-to-day, and they look forward to coming to release that energy and not only to just be creative, but I truly believe, especially people that are really good at crafting, they enjoy sharing what they know.
Retired psychiatrist Roy Troutman creates quilts as a form of relaxation. He learned this by watching his grandmother and gets a certain joy.
The joy of giving it to somebody and seeing them excited about getting a handmade quilt by a family member. And I've quilted about somewhere between 15 and 20 quilts, mostly for family members. I've only sold one quilt. I just prefer to do it, and then I enjoy doing it.
I've seen some of the best quilt making, knitting and crocheting by some of the best yarn working people in the local area, and they seek us out. Crafty people seek out crafty places.
And it seems that Yarn Junkie is one of those places.
And before we close tonight, we want to invite you to a special edition of 1036 on Milwaukee PBS. It's March 23rd, 8 p.m. on Channel 10. The one-hour live special, Lead and Our Health, looks at the impact this problem can have on all of us. Here's a preview.
We're bringing together experts from the federal, state, and local government, as well as local children's serving organizations, so that we can talk about the impact of lead in our environment and how nutrition can help mitigate lead absorption. There's a very simple message that we're trying to get out. Well-fed means less lead. And so a hungry stomach absorbs lead faster, and so children that are well-fed are less likely to absorb lead. But a diet that is high in vitamin C, iron, and calcium will also help mitigate lead absorption. We are now taking to labeling the tops of our infant formula with a message that well-fed means less lead, and encouraging people to only use bottled water when they're mixing their infant formula. That way they don't have to worry about whether or not their water is safe and whether or not there's lead in the water when they're mixing the formula, and as a result exposing an infant. We're thinking before about paint, but we also need to think about water, and we need to think about soil. Lead is a toxic substance, and no level of lead is appropriate for anyone to ingest.
I'll have a report on the ways women are affected by high lead levels and how you can protect yourself and your family from lead exposure. We'll have medical and lead abatement experts with us in the studio to take your calls and answer your questions on Facebook. That's Lead in the Water, March 23rd, 8 p.m. on Channel 10, Milwaukee PBS. And that's our program for this evening. For Black Nouveau, I'm Joanne Williams. Thanks for watching.